It wasn't the way the Hoosiers wanted to go out. Wasn't the way Trayce Jackson-Davis deserved to go out. But ultimately, a whole lot of familiar flaws was the reason IU season came to an end on Sunday.
You are Locked On Hoosiers, your daily podcast on the Indiana Hoosiers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, everybody? Welcome into another episode of Locked On Hoosiers, your one and only daily one-stop shop for everything IU athletics. I'm your host, as always, Jacob. I want to thank you guys for making us your first listen every single day, especially on a day like today. It was frustrating, infuriating even. That's the reason we did not have a live show on Monday night. I was too angry to talk about it in the moment, but ultimately the Hoosiers fall to Miami. 85-69 is the final, a scoreline that obviously was pretty fair to how the Hoosiers played in the second half. I sat there once the final buzzer went off. I didn't know what emotion I felt. For a lot of the second half, I was really, really frustrated because it was unforced errors. It was self-inflicted wounds that were costing IU this game. I was also pretty sad that this is the way Trayce Jackson-Davis' career was going to come to an end. He deserves so much better than that. And it was just a mix of emotions. Mike Woodson was kind of the same way. He said after the game, quote, "This is a tough one to swallow because I truly believe this team had a legitimate shot." There might have been a little bit of that mixed in. At its best, IU absolutely did have a legitimate shot. They were, people called them a dark horse Final Four contender, I guess by the nature of calling them dark horse, that they weren't necessarily expected to. But, I mean, yeah, we watched this team beat Purdue a couple times this season. We watched them take on some pretty good teams, but it was a whole season's worth of evidence that was laid out right in front of us on Sunday that led to this loss. And you got to start with the rebounding, man. What a frustrating way to lose a must-win game, a do-or-die game, just being thoroughly outworked. That's what rebounding is. We've spoke about it all year. As the season has gone along, IU has gotten worse and worse, I think, at keeping teams off the glass, and it's gotten bad late in the season. But you can think back to the Rutgers game, the beginning of 2023, the game in Rutgers where IU just got smoked. They could not keep them off the glass either. I think it became apparent as the season went along in scouting reports that was a vulnerability for IU, and Miami absolutely punished the Hoosiers. 20 offensive rebounds, which their previous high was 17 against, I believe it was Lafayette. It was a non-conference game against a nobody. And of the first 25 points Miami scored in the second half, 15 of them were second chance points. I think they finished with 27 second chance points. I couldn't find a box score that had that anywhere. That was the last number I saw. Jack Grossman had that tweet with the stat about second half second chance points. I don't know. It was that was a flaw for the whole season, and I don't feel like I need to dive too deep into it because I've sat here and talked about it, which is part of what made it so frustrating. Rebounding is an effort stat. It's often called an effort stat, especially offensive rebounding. The Hoosiers, from that Rutgers game in early January on, just didn't show that effort to keep teams off the glass. Norchad Omier had 8 offensive rebounds himself. As the second half continued going on, you saw Miami grow in confidence even in that regard and start attacking the rim more and more consistently. I thought for good chunks of the second half, IU's defense was good up to the point of securing an offensive rebound, and then it wasn't. And that's part of a defensive possession. I thought they forced some really bad shots, some really tough looks, some really long three-pointers, but when Omier is under the basket, getting you a second chance or a second chance at scoring, kicking out to three-pointers again, you're gonna lose. And that's what it just felt helpless watching IU lose this way. It wasn't. IU was fully in control of whether they kept teams off the glass or not. I think the other frustrating part of this is that the Hoosiers came out in that second half after falling behind. They came out energized. I was talking to friend of the show, Jared Gasul, about that end of the first half. That first half was atrocious. I don't think I could have drawn up a worse first half. And you go into the locker room down 5. And we were talking at halftime saying, I've seen this team respond and come out strong. I've seen them fold. It's a 50-50 shot what they're going to do. They came out strong, and I was ready for it. IU was in control, and then they just completely abandoned what got them there. Trayce Jackson-Davis did not touch the ball nearly enough, and we're going to talk about that. Honestly, we can talk about it now. He had 10 shots. He had 11 free throws, so he was going to the line a fair amount, but he had 10 shots. The only other time since IU kind of turned their season around after the Penn State game, the only other time he had 10 shots or fewer was the road game against Purdue when Jalen Hood-Schifino had a legacy game, and he was deferring. He was telling Mike Woodson, do not give me the ball. So he had 23 points. He was 7 of 10, 9 of 11 at the line. What was working was putting Jalen and Trayce in a pick and roll. They were blitzing the ball screen. Trayce was short rolling, and then he gets the ball 4-on-5 against 4-on-3, against a defense that was compromised, and he was making the right reads time and again. IU came out of the half and hit that Trey Galloway three-pointer on that play. Trayce was attacking the rim and scoring on those plays, and IU just went away from it. It was a string, specifically right after they took the lead, of really bad shots. IU's guards were really bad on Sunday, and it cost them. Mike Woodson said the same. I thought Miami was the better team. They showed it first half and second half. I thought when we got back in it, we just didn't do the things that put us in the position once we got the lead to win this game. It's that simple. I don't know if it's an experience thing. Those specifically are the types of moments you would want Xavier Johnson back. But at the same time, you can't really use that as an excuse overall because Xavier Johnson isn't going to make up 20 offensive rebounds. Like, that part wasn't going to change. But specifically in that moment, that's where you want Xavier Johnson back. But these guys have been here all year. They've been in this position since December. They know better. You shouldn't need to be told, get the ball to Trayce. And at the beginning of the game when IU fell behind early, and in that stretch, they just didn't give the ball to Trayce. And the end result was Miami storming back in front and just taking full advantage of IU making some questionable decisions. We need to have a bigger talk on IU's guards, though, because I think that was perhaps the biggest difference. Not perhaps. That was the biggest difference in this one. IU's guards versus Miami's guards. IU got thoroughly outplayed in that regard. We're going to talk about that here in a second. First, the Built March Madness bracket is here. We know everybody has a favorite Built Bar or Puff, and now's your time to make it count. Go to BuiltMarchMadness.com to vote for your favorites. You know, I got the cookies and cream. I keep mentioning it. There's so many good ones that it's hard to pick one. Cookie dough is also a favorite as well. Honestly, it's a good way to go see some of the best flavors or the favorite flavors that they have is just go look at that bracket. Also, if you vote, you don't even have to actually know. Just vote because you'll be entered in a drawing where 50 lucky Locked On listeners will get a free box of Built. Not only that, but one Locked On fan will win a 12-month subscription to Built to have Built's best bars or puffs delivered monthly straight to your door. you got to try Built. Built, the best protein bar ever, covered in real chocolate, still incredibly healthy for you. Run to BuiltMarchMadness.com right now to vote for all your favorite bars or puffs and pick up a box while you're there. You can vote every day in March, so be sure to stop by and support your pick. Thanks to you guys for making us your first listen. Again, even on a day like today, make sure you check out the brand new podcast, Locked On College Basketball. They're not really brand new anymore. They've been around for a while, but they have you covered with everything you need to know about the tournament. I know it probably isn't a fun day to listen to it. Maybe give them a day off so they're not talking about Miami beating IU, but if you can stomach it, head on over there today. Listen to them cover everything from Sunday's action. You can listen to them on YouTube, wherever you guys get podcasts. Let's talk about guard play, because as I mentioned, IU's guards were woeful. You can start at the top. Jalen Hood-Schifino was really bad. I wrote that on my notes before the game ended. I was taking notes pretty early on in the second half because I could tell it wasn't going to be IU's day. I will note, if you guys did not see on Twitter, if you closed everything out, whatever it may have been, Jalen Hood-Schifino was very, very, very emotional after this game. He didn't talk to reporters. He was, there were some tweets out there just about how emotional he was. We won't dive too deeply into it, but any idea that athletes don't care in an NIL era, specifically athletes that are probably going to be one and done, it's nonsense. Throw it out of here. That is a trope, a misconception, whatever you want to call it. So I will grant him that. Jalen didn't have it on the night. It wasn't because he was disinterested in an eye on the NBA. He was very broken up about this loss. Having said that, he struggled. I thought he had some really, really bad shot selection. And he was one of the main proponents in that stretch we mentioned where IU took the lead and then got away from what was working. He took a couple of really bad shots in that section. And honestly, if not for that barrage of three-pointers he hit at the very end of the game, his stat line would have looked a lot worse. He finished with 19 points, but it was 8 of 22 shooting. And again, he made some shots late on. He made 3 straight threes out of nowhere. That was the only threes he made. I believe he was 0 of 7, 0 of 8. I don't know how much of that came in garbage time before then or whatnot, but just a really bad night from him. Early on, he was like actively bad. He was making bad decisions, was not defending at all. He got benched, brought back into the game. I thought he played better throughout the rest of the first half. And then he was fine making the short roll read in that stretch and getting that pass there. So there was a stretch of the game where he was good, but then things really got away from him. He's a really good mid-range shooter who settles for a lot of really bad quality mid-range shots. Contested mid-range shots are always going to be there. Don't take them with 19 seconds left on the shot clock. You really shouldn't be taking them at all in kind of the modern era, but the timing of them was really bad. Tamar Bates, there's going to be a lot of turnover in the offseason, and I wouldn't be surprised if this was Tamar Bates' last game. I'm not going to say he needs a transfer. We didn't do that last year. I'm not going to do it again this year. He might need a change of scenery. He is indistinguishable offensively compared to what he was last season or early in this season. 0 of 7 from the field, 0 of 4 from 3. I'll say and it's true, he's made some notable improvements defensively, and it allows him to get on the court still. But IU didn't have a point off the bench on the night. They were outscored 14-0 in bench points. And Tamar Bates was really bad in that regard. Trey Galloway, I thought, played well. He was the only one that seemed to really show up. He was 0 of 3 from the free throw line, about the only knock you can have on him. He had 5 steals. All of them came in the first half. Got a little wild at times, had 3 turnovers, but for a really a shooting guard that has been forced into a lot of ball handling duties. He played fine. He felt like the only one who gave a damn for a large portion of that first half, and really the whole game. He was the only one it felt like was playing with kind of any kind of effort outside of Trayce Jackson-Davis. But you compare all three of those against what Miami had to offer. We knew Miami had really good guards. Isaiah Wong, 27 points. He looked like the ACC Player of the Year. I thought Trey defended Nigel Packwell 5 of 12 from the field for 12 points. And then Jordan Miller had 19 points on 16 attempts. That's your difference. Those three guards versus what IU's guards did. You weren't going to match it. You weren't ever going to match what Miami did, but you needed to play close and then thoroughly win the front court battle. IU did not keep it close in the backcourt and did not thoroughly win the front court battle. The end result is you lose by double digits in the game not being close. Miami's guards controlled this game. You saw it early on. The reason they got their lead, they were really smart in how they attacked IU. They spread the floor out. They brought Trayce up to the three-point line for ball screen actions and then would immediately swing the ball, and that person would drive and attack. IU couldn't stop the drive, and Trayce wouldn't be there to protect the rim. So I don't know why you would want to do this, but you can look back in the first half and it happened time and time again. I was surprised that IU didn't go to a zone. They played a little bit more drop coverage, and Miami got a little bit away from what was working for them. So it didn't persist throughout. But early on, that's how IU's defense also got better. They weren't giving up straight line drives the entire game, which was the biggest part of that. But that's how they jumped out early. They were spreading IU out, getting to the rim, and Trayce wasn't there to protect the rim. Defensively, Miami's guards sagged off of IU's guards, denied a lot of the entry passes to Trayce in that regard, kind of dared them to shoot threes. That's been a problem for IU all season long. They just don't want to shoot them. They were 8 of 25. I would have bet at least 8 of those were in garbage time, and we know 3 of the makes were. So IU did not shoot the ball well from the three-point line. That again, it's been the case all season long. Low volume, high efficiency, but if you force IU to kind of up the volume, the efficiency doesn't go up. I thought one other thing that is worth some criticism. I will say that Mike Woodson did not lose IU this game by a mile. IU's lack of effort and intensity and execution lost them this game. Mike Woodson did not want them to go away from Trayce Jackson-Davis. Mike Woodson could not make them rebound the ball. What he could do, I thought he was a bit too stubborn and needing to go small. Race Thompson was an enormous reason why IU got to the round of 32. He was also one of IU's worst players on Sunday. IU needed to go small a lot sooner, whether that meant playing Miller Kopp at the floor, whether that meant playing Caleb Banks at the floor. Caleb Banks came in at the end of the first half, played 3 minutes, looked great. He made a couple of really good plays. He had the athleticism to keep up with guys, and I thought really impacted the game in those 3 minutes. Or I think he only played 2 minutes and then came in garbage time, but he didn't play in any meaningful game. It wasn't until there were 5 minutes left that IU went with Kopp at the 4 and played 3 guards. Race could not – he looked bad physically, to be quite honest. He couldn't elevate quick enough to score offensively and had a number of shots blocked. And then defensively, absolutely could not hang with guys on the perimeter, and it cost IU. Mike Woodson was a little too stubborn in that regard, I thought, but also his bench was bad. So it's kind of a double-edged sword. We just said the bench didn't score any points. Tamar Bates was bad. Malik Renew was bad. Jordan Geronimo completely fell out of the rotation. I think a large part because of defensive mistakes. So he was stubborn. I didn't think he made the right call, but also I don't know who you call upon. He probably should have called on Caleb Banks more, but that is an enormous moment to put a guy in the second half of a round of 32 game. It's one of those things that's easier said than done. Just some final thoughts about this. Mike Woodson kind of said it best. Quote, we made a step forward, but it's not good enough. It's not. IU is moving forward significantly. I mean, Duke, Kentucky, Arizona, Kansas, all these other teams went out in the round of 32 this year. Not to say IU's on that level, but I mean, in that very specific measurement, IU is on that level. It's going to be a really interesting offseason. We have a lot of time to talk about this. I think there's going to be a lot of turnover. There's going to be a lot of action in the transfer portal. It's going to be a really fascinating offseason. Again, we will talk about that later. IU is going to get an immediate shot at some payback. Their women's team, IU's women's team, obviously plays Miami tonight. Let's preview that and whether Mackenzie Holmes is going to be available for the Hoosiers. Before we do that, let's talk about FanDuel. I hope you guys hedged against your happiness and bet on Miami tonight. Even if you bet on the Hoosiers, I hope you guys use FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because new customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's bonus bets back if your first bet does not win. Just download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. It's safe, secure, super easy to use. Then you can bet on everything from money line to point scores and threes drained. Plus, FanDuel even lets you combine your bets for a bigger payout with a same-game parlay. So don't miss your chance to get your no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets when you go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon to learn more. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. The biggest question surrounding the IU women's game tonight is, will Mackenzie Holmes play? The answer appears to be, it certainly seems like it. Terry Morin spoke to reporters on Sunday. Quote, I think by all accounts right now, she's more than ready to be in the lineup tomorrow night and see playing time. She added that she'll probably be limited and be on kind of a minutes restriction. She took part in practice on Sunday, but was pulled early because she, quote, got a lot of reps in. If you're concerned, which I am, was all of that, allow me to offer one more quote that might ease some of your concerns. This is again from Terry Morin. Quote, a lot of this has just been precautionary. We have goals for this tournament. She talked about Holmes and letting her take reps off. So what I think probably happened, some of this is confirmed, some of this is maybe a little bit of speculating. Mackenzie Holmes said herself, her knee injury flared up in the Big Ten tournament. She also said that this is something that can happen at any time. And I think at this point in the season, IU realized if we have these goals that Terry Morin said, we have to have Mackenzie Holmes available. And there is very little point in Mackenzie Holmes getting all these extra reps in practice in a first-round game that you're going to win by 30 without her. There's no point in using up those kind of finite number of reps you have left of her right now in those games, because at any point she could re-aggravate it or it could flare up again. This knee injury, again, it's the same knee she had surgery on last season. So IU is kind of doing the smart thing here, the precautionary thing, and saying, we don't need you right now. Let's keep you rested up. Let's get that knee as healthy as possible. Let's not risk it. There's no point in risking it in a game against Tennessee Tech that you're going to win by 30. If she's available, like she should be, IU's probably going to win this game against Miami by a fair amount. And they're even going to be able to do it with Mackenzie on a minutes limit. So I would expect Mackenzie to only play 20-ish minutes. That is pure speculation, but 20-ish minutes, 25 minutes maybe in this one. It's just kind of one of those common sense things. We talked about Miami, IU's opponent, earlier in the week. Last week, I guess. I've lost all track of time. Last Thursday, we talked to Sabrina Merchant, did a full bracket breakdown. You can listen to her thoughts there. And then we talked a little bit about them on Saturday's episode that if you guys may have missed over the weekend, and their performance against Oklahoma State. They had a huge comeback. They were down big at halftime, down big in the first half, and then just went on a crazy run in the second half to win 62-61. Survived a pretty chaotic ending in that one. Haley Cavender was the leading scorer at 16 points. They had 4 players in double figures. If I'm being frank, there's nothing really about this Miami team that stands out. They shoot a lot of 2-pointers. They're 37th in the country in 2-pointers attempted, or made. But they don't shoot 3-pointers. They don't shoot them effectively. They're 226th in attempts per game, 176th in percentage. They shoot 31% from 3. If a lot of their offense is going to be going inside, having the Big Ten Defensive Player of the Year waiting on them there will be plenty enough. So if Mackenzie Holmes plays, I'm comfortable with IU winning this game and winning it comfortably. Even if she doesn't play, IU should win the game. I don't know how comfortable it'll be, but IU should win this game kind of regardless of Mackenzie Holmes' availability. Cavender is the team's leading scorer at 12.8 points. Destiny Harden is 11.9 points, and those are the only 2 in double figures. It's kind of this by committee approach. Jasmine Roberts averages 8 points. Lola Pendande averages 7.9 points. Jalea Williams averages 6.9. Lachey Dwyer averages 6. Like, there's a lot of players that play for them and average, 5, 6, 7 points per game. Ultimately, though, IU just has more talent than this Miami team. And again, this should be a victory, and it hopefully will be. We'll be back tomorrow night. I promise. Win or lose, we'll talk about what happened in this game. You have Scouts Honor. You can't see me doing it, but Scouts Honor. We'll be back live Monday night to talk about this. Between it being Sunday night, being a late game, being a really frustrating loss, I don't think it was good for anybody to hop on and start firing off reactions after that men's game on Sunday. We can try again on Monday, try it again tonight. So thanks again for making Locked On Hoosiers your first listen. For your second listen, check out Locked On College Basketball. Isaac Shade and Andy Patton have you guys covered with everything you need to know on and off the court. Still a busy week for them. They're going to break down everything about the tournament that happened, everything to look forward to next weekend. I don't know that I can stomach watching the men's tournament moving forward. That loss stings. That show, though, is available on YouTube and wherever you get podcasts. Follow us on Twitter at @LO_Hoosiers. Subscribe to the podcast if you haven't already. Leave a quick rating and review. Most importantly, though, guys, hope you have a great Monday. Don't let IU's loss get you down too much because we have another one tonight. So go Hoosiers and LEO.